Hey.
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of the most wonderful real estate podcast ever. I'm your host, Dwan Bent Twyford. I'm America's most sought after real estate investor. And I'm super excited that you are here today to talk with us. I have a super great guest. He's a wicked smart man. And we give all call of our men the wicked smart men. And
Right.
our motto at Dwanderful is people before profits. If that resonates with you, you're at the right place. This is the right time. I got the right guests for you. So today I want to introduce Casey Brown. Casey, how are you today?
Doing fine, doing wonderful, doing Dwanderful. Is that right?
Wonderful. I know. I took my name and I made a word.
There you go.
That makes it more fun. So
Yes.
we like to start off and have a toast. And you're having water. Is that right?
Yes.
So, cheers. I'm going to welcome you. Got to have Southern hospitality. So welcome to the show.
Southern hospitality. Well, if it was really true Southern hospitality, we'd be cheers like we'd
Moonshine.
have or bourbon or something. But anyway,
I'm a moonshine girl. So everybody just take a deep breath. Shake it all out. Y'all open your mind, get ready for some fun, some learning. And Casey and I are going to have a super good time.
yes.
And you're right. My family's from Tennessee. So I actually am I love moonshine. Like the real, like one of our friends like makes in the still and like the old fashioned, like real moonshine.
Yep.
Every time I go to my dad's in Ohio, I'm like, first thing I do, I'm like, okay, I hit the moonshine bottle.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was a kid, I was probably, I don't know, 13 or 14. When you're 13 or 14 years old, you're an investigator. You're investigating everything about the world, right? Well,
Yes.
my parents had split up, and so my dad was at a Christmas party with some friends, right? Well, all the friends had their kids, and we were all beating and banging around or whatever. And I had been worrying the absolute crap out of these guys because they were drinking what looked like this water, right? And I kept on and kept on and kept on. And the guy poured, he said, one of my dad's buddies said, fine, hey, if you're, here it is. So he poured just it was a smidge into a styrofoam cup. And I sat there and I looked at it and I was like, all right, they're testing me, right? I got to figure this out. And I should have knew. He told me, he said, better hurry up and drink that, because if you don't, it's going to eat the bottom of the cup. And I should have knew right then. That should have been my warning to leave it alone. Well, no. So anyway, I needless to say, I had a headache Christmas morning, and that was my first experience, and really my last experience for that matter, with moonshine.
So my friends and I used to, because the parents always had it, but they wouldn't let any of us kids have it. So we would get a Mountain Dew can.
Yep.
And we would dump the Mountain Dew out and put some moonshine in our can. And so we were like 13, 14. And we were like, we'd actually mix the Mountain Dew because, the moonshine's strong.
Yes.
And we'd mix it. And we'd be hanging out, like sipping on our Mountain Dew, but it always had moonshine in it.
Definitely not for the faint of heart. If you're looking for a good, nice cocktail to have, moonshine is probably... it's gotten so crafty now, though. It's probably
it is. And so now you buy it at the store and it's like, that's not real moonshine. Moonshine's made. My grandfather actually got thrown in jail for 90 days for being a moonshiner.
Oh, wow.
So my family was like deep in it, and I still like it, but it's not something you can like drink and go out. It's like if you're hanging out, you have a couple sips, and then like your whole body turns beet red. Next thing you know, you're just like, woo, what was that?
Yeah, they say the best moonshine will make you blind. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, I've never had enough for that, but I have had enough to throw up and feel like crap for like 3 days. That's just funny. I always love meeting people from like Kentucky and Tennessee and stuff like that. There's so many fond memories. I spent every summer there with my grandparents up till I was, like 17. So I just have so many fond memories of getting in a lot of trouble out there way, because they lived like out. Like my grandparents didn't have indoor plumbing until I was like 16.
Yeah, my dad will tell you he was in the sixth grade. I'm not that old. I always remember my dad was in the sixth grade before they had indoor plumbing.
Yeah.
And
So
I don't know
I
if
was a
it was
girl in the woods, going from Dayton, Ohio to visit my grandparents and going to an outhouse. And I was like, what is
I
this?
always said, I always heard my grandmother say that my grandfather, when they first got indoor plumbing, he was like, "You don't do that in the house. I'm going to the outhouse." Whatever. Have fun.
All right. So basically, what we like to do is I like to have you tell us like who you are right now, just right now, what you do, and how we can get a hold of you. And then I have some questions here. I'm just going to ask you some questions, and we're going to have some fun. And I'm going to backtrack and find out how you got to be Mr. Casey Brown with 3,000 Capital. So we want to know, Casey, what is your deal?
All right. So my name is Casey Brown. I am a real estate syndicator, capital raiser, and real estate agent is really kind of where I got my start.
Okay.
And I always, through my whole real estate career, I had always heard folks would say, and you would hear on the news and reading books that the real estate industry has created more millionaires and billionaires than any other industry in the world, right? And as I pursued the real estate business, I mean, and we're talking like, I'm a single agent. My wife's been licensed for a couple of years now. I have a secretary, and we're doing 75 or 80 transactions a year. I mean, we're talking a considerable amount of real estate transactions with a relatively small team, got a lot of automation software and so on. But the thing is that even with that amount of volume for just 2.5 people, I was like, this is not life-changing kind of money. I mean, this is not like generational kind of money. This is like making a decent living kind of money, but it's not like epically. So I started investigating. Obviously, I had been a rental owner, single family residential rental owner. I've had a couple smaller apartment complexes, but I never could figure out how to get the snowball bigger, if you will.
Yep.
I had a snowball and I would add another single family residence to it. And then it was just, I was adding, like if I split the snowball in half, I was adding a single family residence to one half of it. And I was also adding a headache to the other. So the snowball was growing, but it wasn't growing in a manner in which you can figure to be anything reasonable on your mental health. Right. So I'm just like, gosh, dang. I was like, so long story short, I hit a plateau in about 2015, and I went through a nasty divorce. Basically, but a lot of good things came from that. So I can't, my wife now came from that. My stepkids came from that. A lot of other things that a lot of earthly growing, I guess, if you will, or mind growing came from that as well. Basically ended up having to sell everything I owned because it was just no other way to really settle it. Which was perfectly fine. The kids were something I was not willing to negotiate with. I wanted my 50% of the time. And unfortunately, it cost me a massive attorney bill to actually be able to enforce what was rightfully mine, which was my half of the time.
Right.
And I'm very fortunate that I have 2 daughters, and I'm very fortunate that the courts just prior to my getting divorced saw it my way. And it's a law now in the state of Kentucky where upon 2 parents splitting up, it is automatic 50-50 custody, no question.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's not like that all the time. So tell us real quick, tell us how to get a hold of you, because I really like to have your all your contact information up in the top of the show notes, then at the bottom of the show notes. Sure. Before we dive super deep in, tell us how to get a hold of you.
The best place to find me. Okay. The best place to find me on a daily basis is right here, CashFlow Pro. I have a podcast that is a daily podcast. We interview just a massive extent of real estate professionals, people that are capital raisers, real estate agents, multifamily owners, car wash owners, RV park owners, mobile home park owners,
nice.
The whole gamut. So CashFlow Pro. That's where I hang out at. That's
Is
where I
that .com? Is that
Yeah, well,
Instagram?
it's actually now I want your listeners to follow me now because this is a new way of doing things. My website is www.cashflow.pro. Cashflow.pro. No .coms, no nothings, just cashflow.pro. And you can go there and you can find our whole catalog of episodes with, again, every professional, every facet of professionals.
Nice, including me. I'll be on there too.
Including you will be on there as well, and we're going to give you your own spot on the CashFlow Pro website. So
I like it. So it's cashflow.pro.
correct, CashFlow.
Oh, I didn't know .pro was available now instead of like all the .com, .info, .biz, .da da 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 da. That's nice. Cashflow.pro. That sounds professional.
And I'll tell you, and want to know another one that's available that I got for my local real estate sales business.
Yes.
My town, I live right across from Clarksville, Tennessee. So I have both Clarksville and Hopkinsville is where I actually live at, but it's Hopkinsville Estate. That's my email. So, or that's it's really cool. So you can buy a estate email address or website.
Oh, I'm going to look into that today. That sounds good. I haven't gotten any new websites for a long time.
So like my Clarksville real estate, so it's pretty cool. That kind of stuff works out good. It gives you a way for people to remember it. And, but anyway, so no, CashFlow Pro, that's where I'm always hanging out at.
Okay. I love it. So, I was telling you a little bit earlier before we started, my sister lived, actually her town was called Pleasant View. Yep. And I think Clarksville's maybe 20 minutes away.
Not far at all. So, I've sold real estate in Pleasant View.
Yeah. So sadly, she passed away from breast cancer about 8 years ago. But prior to that, she lived out there for about 20 years. I got to tell you, Clarksville and just that whole area, Nashville, that is such a great area. Where you're at, it's a great area to live.
And when's the last time you were there?
Let's see. I probably haven't been back for 3 or 4 years. I go anytime I get in that area, I go back and visit her grave, and I go over and eat at some of the places we used to eat and kind of have a drink, and
it's all basically like one area now. Like Nashville doesn't really even stop. Nashville just comes because it's grown so fast. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to somebody the other day. I mean, they're basically going to have to double the infrastructure. Like they missed a step of infrastructure upgrading somewhere because they're going to have to go from 4 lanes. They're going to have to go straight to 8 lanes instead of 6.
Oh, wow. Now, like I said, my family is from Crossville, Tennessee. So I grew up and we always went to the Opry, and, from Crossville to Nashville it's a 3-hour, Crossville's way in the country. It's a 3-hour drive over. So that was a big thing. Oh my God, we're going to go to Nashville for the weekend. That was the big thing when I was a kid, from going from Crossville to Nashville and seeing the Opry and stuff like that. So I love it. All right. So tell me how old you are right now.
I am 40. Just turned 40. I just
40.
40 about 6
months.
Wow.
Yeah. Lordy, look who's 40. Have you ever heard that one? I'm sure you've heard that.
Every day I think it.
It's funny. Hey, listen, 40 is awesome. I loved turning 40. I was so excited when I turned 40. I was like, look at me. I'm 40. I'm an investor. I'm successful. I'm rich. I'm amazing. I was so excited when I turned 40. Then I turned 60 and I was like, dang, I'm getting old, man.
Yeah, I heard that. I know I'm 40 and I'm just every day I get up and I'm constantly blessed with I've got beautiful kids.
So how old are your kids?
Let's see. They start at 13. I've got one that's getting ready to be, 13, 11, 10, 9, 8. Yep. 13, 11, 10, 9, 8.
You have 5 kids?
Yes, ma'am.
13, 11, 10, 9, 8. Wow. Good for you.
Yeah, we stay busy.
I was going to say, you guys are busy.
We got baseball, soccer, baseball, volleyball, and soccer. So we got 3 good sports covered. So.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, I think it's really important for kids to be I don't know. I grew up in West Melton in the 70s. I graduated high school in the 70s. And other than just playing football or baseball, they didn't really have a lot of sports or a lot of anything for girls to do. So I never really grew up playing sports because there just wasn't really anything there. You'd be on the softball team, but we really didn't have anything.
And we really, my girls leaned into soccer and volleyball pretty good, and they both love it, and I enjoy it too. They don't like it when I come. They like it when I come to the games, but my youngest daughter always says, "Dad, can you please try not to yell?" I'm like,
Are you that screaming parent that's yelling at the ref?
because no, I don't pick at the refs. I pick at them. The reason why she doesn't like it is because she can't be lazy when I'm there.
That's right.
And I'm at every game. I mean, I've probably missed in all of my kids' childhoods. I can count on less than one hand. One hand could probably count the number of games I've missed.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, you don't. The easy route is not. You're never going to be. The most successful route is never going to be the easy route for the most part.
And it's not.
Once in a while, somebody hits a lick and gets things going, but with the easy route. But for the most part, you have to ditch down and get a cycle going and get moving. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep, I know it. So let's just back up a little bit. So you're 40 right now. You got 5 kids, got a beautiful wife, CashFlow Pro podcast, and you raise capital and things like that. So that's really like a neat part of your business. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But what were you like when you were like 14, 15, 13? Like, what was that Casey Brown doing? Where were you living? What were you doing back then?
See, so I grew up in Colorado Springs. I went to Coronado High School in Colorado Springs. I graduated in 2000. So the 14 or 15-year-old Casey Brown was basically a product of the 90s. And if you are a product of the 90s, you and I probably agree, which that the night, like, you officially are not a badass unless you grew up in the 90s. Like, I mean, there's no possible way you could be like, hey, no, the 70s. I'm like, no, take the 70s, go, because if you grew up in the 90s, you had everything from the first digital pet to
oh yeah, did you have a Tamagotchi?
It's the Tamagotchi, and you had you grew up with the movie Gremlins, and you grew up with Uncle Buck. I mean, Uncle Buck taught us no telling what. He taught us how to cook trash, right? So I mean, there's no possible way that anybody on this planet that wasn't like my age group, you can't be a badass. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. My kids all grew up in the 90s. My oldest one.
Yeah, and I can go ask them. Go ask them.
They're 37. They had the little Zen. They got their first cell phone. They had the Furbies. They had Tamagotchis. They had all the stuff. So,
and like,
the music was great.
That was like when Black Friday was born too. So
yeah.
And now it's like, you just want people to be decent humans and record the fights on Black Friday on their cell phone with it turns, you want it turned straight so you can see the whole thing, or turn sideways. I mean, so you can see the whole thing.
I raised my kids really old school. Like, you're going to work, you're going to get ahead, you're going to get a bunch of free stuff. I raised them with a lot of discipline and structure and work and ethics. And I was like, now I see some of these kids now, these millennials. I'm like, oh my God, did your parents not raise you right?
I'll throw a little curveball at you for my 14, 15-year-old Casey. And this is something that my stepdad, I was one of those fortunate children, right? I was very fortunate to have. Nowadays, you say I have 2 fathers. It means a completely different meaning than what it was when I was.
Yes, it does.
Because I actually had 2 fathers. I had my real dad, my blood father, who taught me endless amounts of stuff. I was also the benefit of a stepfather who basically raised me as his own. Never tried to fill my father's shoes, my blood father's shoes, by saying, hey, my father never, that there was a genuine respect amongst everybody. My mother was busy yelling at all of us. But I had 2 fathers, and so my stepfather, he owned a pet cemetery, right? And so I grew up in the pet cemetery business, and believe it or not, my ultimate job was to dig the graves by hand with a shovel in the Colorado, at the base of Cheyenne Mountain, which, as most are aware, it's basically solid granite. So we were
Yes.
always chipping through and taking pics. And anyway, it sounds much worse than it really was, because it built a lot of character.
That does.
My stepdad taught me that's where I learned, like I said, when I yell at my daughters or my sons at their games, it's like, there was no shortcut to digging that hole to get that dog in the ground, right?
Yes.
Chipping, if you hit a piece of granite, I mean, there was no way around it. You swung that pick, or you swung that sledgehammer until it broke, and then you got it out. And so that's where I really come from. And we buried hundreds of dogs and cats and gerbils and horses and whatever kind of.
That's kind of sweet though, that your dad owned a pet cemetery.
Yep.
I mean, I bury all my dogs, and so so someone has to do that job like that. But our pets mean so much to us.
It was really strange, because a lot of times, like, unless you're a dog or unless you're a pet lover, hard to understand. But like you take my dogs at home right now. I mean, they're like my kids. They're like our kids. They're family. They're protected. They're family. We love them. We pet on them. Sometimes we get aggravated with them because they chew up PlayStation remotes, which I'm not saying that happened recently, but it did. And so anyway, we love them, but it taught me an element of compassion, and an element of trying to meet people where they are today, because we would literally meet people when they just lost a member of their family, right?
Yeah, they're just bawling their eyes out. They're devastated. Yeah.
I mean, and these people would literally come out, and every once in a while, I say if we buried 5 dogs, 3 of them were dogs we went and picked up at the vet after they were put down, buried them, covered them up, and then called the people and said, "Hey, we're finished." And then they would come out, put their flowers and whatever, and go about their way. 2 out of 5 actually would hold. I'm sorry, 1 out of 5, the people would come watch us do all of that, right? Say goodbyes and all that stuff. Then 1 more out of 5. So 3 out of 5 we picked up at the vet, buried. 1 out of 5, the people would come watch us, and 1 out of 5 actually had a full-on funeral for their dogs. But again,
kind of sweet.
You were meeting people where they were, and it taught me a lot about sales. He also taught me a lot about compassion, and a lot about which I'm not an overly compassionate person to this day. I'm like, you either pay or you don't stay kind of guy. But at the same time, I try to. I'm especially a sucker when it comes to kids. I have a hard time putting kids on the road. If the kid shouldn't be punished for what the adult does. The adult went and bought whatever instead of paying rent. I have a hard time telling that kid that now he has to leave his house. So you have to really choose what you do and how you do it. Sometimes you have to take other escape routes if it's just not working out. But at the end of the day, I have to feed my kids. And that's what I always try to tell people. Hey, I love your kids. I love you. I'm sorry, but I've got kids at home that have to eat too.
I love that. So young you was working with your stepdad, helping people out, meeting people in the grieving stage. And that's some good education for somebody young. Because you're dealing with people like at one of their worst times. I know every time we happen to live on 10 acres up here in the mountains. And we have Newfoundlands. So you know how big Newfoundlands are. My dogs are like 170-pound dogs. Yep. So every time one of my dogs passes away, I have a backhoe and I just dig a big hole. You have to dig like a 3 foot by 3 foot by like 3 foot deep. And so I have all my dogs buried. I have little crosses. We have a little funeral. We do the whole thing, but we do it on our own property.
Yep. Yeah. And it was, it was one of those things that taught me, there was a lot of legal stuff that it taught me too. It really, one thing that they started this pet cemetery when it was I think it was started like the late 60s. So really it all started with the people that owned the property before my stepdad and my grandparents and them. It started with a lady basically just saying, somebody came to her and said, "Hey, I love it out here. Do you care if I bury my dog here?"
Really?
That's how it kind of started. Well, when you start into this, when people go into the cemetery business now, basically it has to be tied to like a trust fund and some other thing, some things to like upkeep and things like that, especially if
I
you
didn't know that.
that wasn't. So as time went on and my stepdad was like nearing retirement age, which has just happened in the last several years, um, the retirement of the pet cemetery business, because me and my brothers got older, he all of a sudden now he's having to go out and hire people to come mow, do what we used to all do. And so now there's like some legal stuff that's just like, you have to try to maneuver and figure it out. And
I did not know that. So I
figuring
learned something completely new today.
figuring it out on the backside is not near as easy as figuring it out on the front side. But again, you have your pets buried and they're yours. You're not out trying to get people to bury their pets.
Yeah.
Their pets there. Other people is what really.
No, I bury mine. I told my husband, I said, gosh, if we ever move with this property, like all the dogs we've had for the last 20 years, they're all there. I was like, I can't leave my dogs.
I had a guy survey his pet cemetery because in Kentucky, it doesn't take much to start a cemetery for a human or anything. So you can, because we're peppered with cemeteries everywhere. It doesn't like my family, for instance, has a cemetery on the original home family farm from back in the 1800s. And so I grew up in Colorado Springs. I live in Kentucky. I was born here in Kentucky. Grew up there, came back.
Oh, you were born in Kentucky? Okay. So when you got to be a little older, say like 20, 25, like what was that, Casey? When did you start like with the business mindset?
So that Casey, let me back you up there just a little bit. So 18 to 20, I'm going to say 18 to 23, right? I was a college person. Had no real, I had a desire, like my dad was in the cattle business. And so I decided one day that I was going to kind of follow in his footsteps, right. And go. So I got a degree in ag economics, ag business.
Okay.
I learned basically, and the way I operate when I go into something, I learn everything about it, like front to back, top to bottom, left to right, the whole 9 yards. Right.
Right.
So I actually ended up getting my Series 3 trading license, which is commodities and options brokering. Right. I was a broker under an agency in Phoenix. And I realized that man, that was a painful way to live. I was missing out on a lot of things in life, and I was chasing a $40 or $80 or $120 commission check. And it was just like, and again, that was one of those things that was what stepped me into the real estate business, because I was like, okay, you go somewhere and it takes you $80 worth of gas to make a round trip, and you're going there for a $250 commission.
Yep.
And it took a whole day to get that. It just didn't make a lot of sense. So while I was trying to move that business, there wasn't much needle moving, if you will, right, with that type of model. And I was trying to figure this stuff out on my own, right? Because I basically had somewhere I could put my license, but I didn't have a lot of guidance. So I was driving down the road one day. I was 20, let's see, I'm trying to think. I was 25. No, let's see. Yeah, 25-ish, 24, okay, 25-ish, somewhere along there. And I saw a Caldwell Banker sign, and I knew the guy. I just so happened to know the guy, a small town. And I was like, man, he sells that house right there, $250,000. And at the time, everybody has this idea that they're going to get 6%. Real estate agents get 6%. Sorry about that. That's me actually. That's my calendar, right? So I was like, man, so he's gonna get 6% there. It's 250. I was like, that's 15 grand. He's gonna make 15 grand. All he do is list and sell that house. And needless to say, there's a lot more to it. But that was needle moving money, right? That's now all of a sudden, then you can really pump that needle up with a $15,000 transaction.
Absolutely.
That 24, 25, 26, 27-year-old Casey steps into business in general, right? And I still am a little naive as to how all of this stuff ties together. So I just get in and I'm like, all right, hey, I don't have anything to lose here. I had a house that was like, I owed like 65 grand on or something like it. It wasn't much. And I had a car that was paid for.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just didn't have anything to lose. So I just went to the wall with everything. And like, I remember my very first ad that I ran, we had homes catalogs when I first started. Right?
Oh yeah, I remember those.
You know what? So I'm sitting there one day and I'm like, all right, I'm flipping through the homes catalog. I didn't have an ad in it yet. It's $155 to run a page ad. And I'm like, this sucks. This doesn't say, hey, I'm here. This doesn't say anything, right? This just basically says, hey, here's a bunch of houses for sale. And it's a month old.
That's right.
And I'm like, all right, so this is the best you people can do. This is the best you can come up with, is to pass this catalog out a month after all this stuff's been on the market.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right. So I started dipping my water into the marketing world. So I ran my page. I ran it upside down. I told them that. I said,
good idea. Good idea.
My page in there. Well, we're not going to run it upside down. We don't want people to think it's an error on our part. So they made me put a title on the page that said "Turning the Real Estate Market Upside Down," so that it appeared, so that it was noted that it was actually done intentionally. But they let me go.
I love that.
So again, and that's what my mind got started on. Okay, you have to do things that are different. You have to be different. You can't just run these, like, this is just, you have to be different. You have to stick out. Otherwise, you just get trampled. So I also realized real quick the value in the listing. The listing is where the value was. Being a buyer broker is okay. It's good for icing on the top.
Yeah.
If you have people that are friends and family and stuff that want to come on, want you to be their buyer agent. But the listings is where the money's at. So I just went out and I started listing everything. You had people that had their house $100,000 overpriced. You had people that had their house 50, 60, 80,000 overpriced. I was like, listen, yes, just give me the listing. Let's go. I don't care. I'll put it on there. So then all of a sudden, now 2 months later, I'm running 2 pages upside down that are full of listings, right? It didn't matter.
I love that.
It didn't matter that they were listings that were overpriced. People saw me moving. They saw me putting my foot on the gas pedal and not looking back and going forward. And again, this is through the motions of, okay, now I'm still naive in the idea or the thought that, like, how do you, like, okay, so I'm starting to move the needle, right? The needle is really starting to kind of move. And I'm making money, but I'm making transactional money, Dwan. I'm making transactional money.
Yeah.
And so long about 2010, I bought my first rental house. And I realized, I said the payment was like, I don't know, I think the payment was around $202 or $210, somewhere along in that area, right? And it rented for $450. Now I know people think $450, man, but again, when you're in the little corner of Kentucky, $450 is not exactly high. It's not exactly, it was just.
No, it's not.
But I realized I was doubling my money.
Yes.
Right. I wasn't doubling the $50,000 that the house cost right off the bat, but I was doubling my money. And the fact of the matter is, you want to know what the secret to that was? The thing that kept resonating in my mind, not only was I doubling my money, but I was doubling my money forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And the only exposure that I had at the time that I couldn't figure out how to mitigate. And again, it wasn't that I couldn't figure out how to mitigate. I knew how to mitigate it, but the interest rate exposure. And that was the only thing I could figure that could ever, if it ever got out of whack, that would really screw that model up. Okay. Yeah. So I figured, all right, but for right now, for this rate is fixed for 5 years. So for 5 years, we're going to go wide open. And we're going to try to do this 4, 5, 10 times. We'll end up doing it about 40 times, right?
Good.
And that's when the plateau happened. That's when the divorce happened. And that's when the life changing began as for me. And I'm going to tell you, I've often, one of the most horrific ways I can imagine that death happens to somebody is being suffocated, right? I don't mean to get grim, but you'll see where I'm going.
No, I'm with you. My two fears of dying are dying in a fire or being suffocated.
That's so, yeah. So suffocation, right? Now my divorce begins, and again, after everything gets going, and I realized that, hey, and I stand there and I look, and I never forget, I looked in the mirror and I said, listen, you either fight for your stuff or you fight for your kids, but you cannot afford to fight both. I couldn't afford to fight both battles. And so I'm like, all right, so to hell with the stuff, right? We're going to just sell it. I told my ex-wife, I told her, I told my attorney, I told them all, I said, just get rid of it. I said, get rid of it and call me when it's done, because I'm out of here. I got things I got to go do. Right.
Yep.
And so with that being said, I never realized the power that the cash flow held until the gavel dropped on that last rental house. The gavel dropped on that last rental house and my cash flow was gone.
That was it.
I could make $100,000 commission check. I can make an $800,000 commission check. I haven't made an $800,000 commission check, but I've made a $100,000 commission check, right?
Good.
So I knew what I could do. I knew where I could go as far as that business went. But the thing that killed me, that suffocated me at that very moment, was when the cash flow got cut off.
Yeah.
And I knew, and I went for about 6 months there where, I'll be honest, I had like $18 in my checking account. I knew I didn't have enough money in my checking account. Now I'm telling you, this is how bad my life got after the cash flow went out. And I tell all this so that the listeners can really understand the power of the cash flow. Right there it is. It says it right there.
Yep.
And the power of the cash flow was me having like not enough money in my checking account to fill up my car and gas so that I could make it to the next appointment. But I knew that if I swiped that card, all they would hold right then was $1 and I could go ahead and fill up. Right. And so once I realized, I was like, and it took me about a month or two of living like that to realize, man, you got to get that cash flow back in your life.
You get that cash flow back. Bring the money back.
I won and it's I'm considerably separated from it now as far as that part of my life goes, but the struggle was real.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're at the bottom and you're looking up, man, it's a hell of a damn journey to get back up. But you know what? The only way you're going to get there is to get up.
Is to get up.
And go.
You guys got to get up. You know, I think sometimes when people, because I have not that same story, but one of those like, dead broke, broke. And I think sometimes that it takes that for some people to get down to the bottom of the barrel like that, to really realize, like, okay, I want freedom. I want money. I want cash flow. How am I going to never be in this position again? How do I avoid this pain that I'm in right now? So
my answer to saying to hell with it and selling all of that stuff, my answer was, well, I've still got the real estate sales business, and they can't take my gift of talking. They can't take my gift of thinking, and they can't take my gift of the other things, but they can take my cash flow, which again, that tightened up pretty.
I feel you. I 100% feel you. So now you've had that, you went through your divorce, you lost all that, you're like squeezed to the life with the cash flow. How did you end up being a guy that lends money and raises capital? Like, how did that happen? Because that's that you understand what a big jump that is.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the average person that broke right there, they tap out like, oh, I can't do it. They go back and get a job, and they get their insecurity, and they just, I'm going to work for the man, whatever man that is. Yep, and they don't pull their bootstraps back up. They don't put on the big boy pants. And
again, take it back to those digging pet graves where you swing that pick. And when you swing that pick, it took so much energy to get that pick all the way around, and it either skipped off or you just barely knocked a little pinch of whatever off. But you know what? You still made headway.
You did.
And when you get up and you look out and you start saying, okay, hey, this happened the last time, right? And the best thing that you can do is learn from that. If you don't learn from that, what's the use of going through that, right?
Amen.
So it taught me a lot about family. It taught me a lot about friends. It taught me a lot about the basics of life, right? What you have to hold a meager existence. But it also taught me, hey, don't go that route again. Okay. I don't mind being tied to the cash flow and my livelihood being tied to the cash flow because that's where it's at. But the bottom line is okay, because I had plateaued, and I feel like my plateau in my business and having so much to look after and see after probably led to me not being very pleasant at home, which ultimately at the end of the day might have taken quite a while for that to happen. But I attribute a considerable amount of that to the divorce, right?
Yeah.
You just grow apart. You're at home, but you're really not at home.
No, you're not there mentally.
And if you're not there mentally, you might as well just be off doing something else. And the thing was that, and I can't impress upon the listeners or whoever out there that hears this that needs a little pinch to get going. Focus. And that was part of my problem as well. I had the sales business, which was transactional. We've all determined is not the way to wealth. I had the rental business. I was also building houses. Okay. When in fact, had I just stopped, and I was good at all three of them, right? But I wasn't great at any of them.
Yeah.
I was great. I had the potential to be great at selling real estate, right? So that's when I realized that, hey, you can scale this, right? You can take this up and you can look out and say, hey, I want to go buy a 250 unit apartment complex. How do you do that, right? What's the best way to do that? Well, fortunately, the Jobs Act had come along just before my divorce. So that's kind of had some time to mature. And we're all, as we're actively in this business, we're beginning to run through these different scenarios and whether they're working or not. And we're really starting to kind of gain our ground on how us as regular people who are unlicensed in the financial industry can make money raising capital and doing syndications, right? Because it's what's been going on for 100,000 years. I mean,
it's been going on forever.
I mean, how much capital did Steve Jobs raise in order to start Apple? I mean, it's the same difference. We just are tied to a physical asset instead of a.
Let me ask you a question about your syndications. Do people have to be accredited investors?
Correct. Now, I deal specifically in accredited investors. Part of the way people go about, they start with maybe family and friends if they do a 506B, which I don't want to get too far in the weeds and take.
Yeah, no.
But because honestly, I just going through what I went through. The last thing that if the whole world ended and we all ran off a cliff and we lost everything, the last thing I want to be at stake is a relationship with my family and friends, because at the end of the day, that's really all we have.
That's all that really matters at the end of it.
What's that?
That is all that matters, really. At the end of everything, all that really does matter is your family and your friends. That really is true. So, what is the minimum amount someone can invest with you guys?
50,000 is really our minimum. Now that is also, we could also, upon our own discretion, it's just that we've determined that 50,000, because we want to be able to service our relationships. We want to be able to, when somebody comes and invests with us, we want to be able to take their call when they call. We want to be able to service that relationship, and the 50,000. And at the end of the day, if we're not profitable, we're not here either, right?
That's right.
You can sit at home and break evens, what an old man told me one time. And so
that's a good saying. You can sit at home and break even. That is a good saying.
If you want to break even, just sit at home and don't do anything. Right? Actually, you're probably going negative because you're having error and whatever else.
That's all right. But, oh my God, with everything happening right now, it's just like, so they can put in 50 and then you use that money to buy.
Now, we do two things, and I don't want to get all screwed up here so that people get confused or.
No. You can just give us the two, because I'm going to send them all back to your site anyway to learn more about you.
All right, cool. So we do two things. We have what we call a one-off syndication, which is where we find an apartment building that is value add. And when I say, you'll come to our website, you can learn what value add, all that stuff is. But value add apartment buildings where we say, hey, 123 Main Street. Then we go, that's where the apartment building is, right? Then we go and we start 123 Main Street LLC.
Right.
Then we basically sell shares of that LLC to investors, to accredited investors. They can come in with a $50,000 minimum, and then we use that towards the purchase of that specific asset, right?
I love that.
We also have another product.
Okay.
These are the two things that we specialize in. The first one being the one-off syndication, right?
Okay.
The second thing being what we call a fund of funds. Now, the first thing.
Fund, say it one more time.
Fund of funds.
Okay.
Now, where you really have to kind of step people around this scenario is they're like, why do I need you to buy shares of that fund for me? Why can't I just go buy shares of that fund, right? Well, for one, we have the experience and the connections directly to the operator, okay? But the way this works is so when you go to a fund, like for instance, one of our funds is Joe Fairless, Ashcroft Capital. And so we go to somebody like that. I'm not even going to say we go to him necessarily, but we go to them, and they have two classes of shares, right? They have Class A shares and they have Class B shares. Class B shares has a minimum investment of $50,000. And again, these are all hypothetical figures. Class B shares has a minimum investment of $50,000. Well, along with that Class B share, you get a 50-50 split, and you get a 7% preferred return, right? They also have a Class A share that has a $500,000 minimum, but that Class A share pays a 10% preferred return and has an 80-20 split, right?
Oh.
What we do is we go to the operator and say, hey, my fund is going to buy one Class A share of your deal. And I'm going to take 10 of my investors who are in at 50 grand a piece. And I'm going to take that $500,000 and I'm going to go buy shares of his deal at a 10% pref, right? Now, remember, they were only going to get 7% with their initial $50,000 investment. Now they're going to get 10% minus what my fees are, which again, all of these are just hypothetical numbers.
No, we know.
Charge such and such because each deal is different. But the one thing that I can tell you is your preferred return and coming through a fund of funds like us is much, much better than it would be if you took your 50K directly to that operator. So then
I love it.
It's a win-win-win-win-win for everybody, because the investor gets a higher pref for a smaller amount initially invested.
Yep.
We get to make a little bit and stay in business.
Yeah.
The operator doesn't have to service these 10 relationships. He only has to service this one.
Yes.
I can pass all of the information that's coming from the deals, what the deals are doing, vacancy rates, all that kind of stuff. I can send it right back to the investors and service those relationships. So not to mention, it gives the investor a direct line to the operator. Now, they can't just pick up the phone and call the operator and say, hey, man, what's going on over there? 4, 5, 6 months. They can come to me, though, and say, hey, what's going on over here? I drove by it today, and there's orange cones everywhere, or there's crime scene tape, or whatever the case is. So they have a direct thing to the operator, because I can pick up the phone, call the operator, and say, hey.
Nice. I really like your business model that you have, Casey.
Well, thank you.
So I always kind of take some notes, and so I can sort of review at the end and see if we were able to kind of get inside the mind of all these awesome people. But I want to ask you a couple other questions. Tell me your favorite band of all time. Is
that giving an inclination to the audience that I'm an awesome person?
You are so awesome.
Can we hang on? I got to call my wife. I need to get that. Can you?
So you are a Casey Raw. Okay, tell me your favorite band of all time.
My favorite band of all time. Does it have to be a band? Because I don't even like. It
could be a person, a singer. It's got to be one.
I mean, Tupac. Got to be it.
Tupac, really? Tupac.
Absolutely, 100%. Tupac, and then if I had a second, Kendrick Lamar.
What was the second one?
Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
And I know
I
as a
actually really like Tupac too.
middle-aged white guy, that's really weird, but that's what I grew up with, man.
That's a middle-aged white guy from the South that's liking Tupac.
South. And but I grew up in the West, so it's
Yeah.
like I had a whole
I have all my playlists on my phone, and I have a whole hip hop kind of section. One of my whole playlists I built for myself is got all the Tupac and all the stuff. I love that music too. It's like, the music is so
it
great.
was real. I'll never forget when I was a kid, though, I'd listen to it and I had my headphones. You could hear everything outside the headphones as much as you could in. And every time they'd say the F word, I had to turn it down way low so my mom wouldn't hear it.
Yes. Yes. Parents did not like Tupac.
I knew every F word on every album because I had
every album. I know. It's good though. Tupac's good. What's your favorite food? I'd
have to go with probably like pizza. I mean, I know that's like such a basic answer, but man, I don't get any better than like if I had to go. A lot of people. I think I'd say Domino's thin crust or Pizza Hut thin crust.
I gotta tell you, I freaking love the Pizza Hut, the pan ones. It's like it's so crunchy and buttery on the bottom. It's like, oh, that's so good.
Yep.
So Casey, what is your favorite time of day? What's your favorite part of your day?
And that has changed as I've gotten older. I like the mornings. And one of the Migos, who's a rap group, I can't remember which one of them it was. He said he used to think that things happened late at night. Things happened. That was when things were happening. He said the older he got, he realized that the real magic happens in the morning, and that's a fact. You get up and it's quiet, and you can think. Your mind is clear, and you can really set out and make decisions that affect you, your family, your lifestyle, your investors, the people that you're entrusted with looking after what their needs and wants. That's when life.
That's when the magic happens.
That's right.
All right, so I'm going to do a quick review. So this session where I interview people, we call it Inside the Minds of Today's Millionaires. So I take a lot of notes and ask a lot of questions, and I don't ever let people send me questions. I'm like, no, I just want to talk to you and see who the real person is. So I'm going to do a little recap, and you can tell me if we figured out just a little bit of who Casey Brown is today. Okay, so first off, CashFlow Pro podcast. Love that. Everyone go there. 40, you have 5 kids, 13, 11, 10, 9, 8, which.
And actually one of those.
I love it though. You're www.cashflow.pro. I love that. You grew up in Colorado Springs. You're a 90s kid. You grew up with like the Uncle Buck.
Hey, I was born in the 80s. I grew up in the 90s. So
born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. Yeah. So my daughter was born in 88. So she's a 90s kid for sure. And so when you hang on a minute here, so you when you were a kid, I like the fact you mentioned the movie Uncle Buck, because that really is. It's still to this day one of my favorite movies. When it comes on TV or something, I'm like, oh my God, Uncle Buck. And it's still super funny. Yeah. But your stepdad, your dad, you have 2 dads and you have 2 like dads. And I love that fact he had a pet cemetery and you were digging graves and you were really learning like the hard work. And, I was like, it's no joke digging into the mountainside of Colorado Springs. So you, I think, learned a lot of integrity and values and things like that. So you were born in Kentucky. When you were a kid, that's what you were doing. Then you were in college. You got your agricultural degree, agricultural series 3. Is that correct?
Well, I got an ag economics degree, ag business degree, and then I got a series 3 license to trade commodities on the Chicago Mercantile and the Chicago Board of Trade. I got that license after I graduated college.
Wow, that's good though. That's all like really great stuff to have. And then somewhere along the way, you saw a Caldwell Banker sign and just started working on. And the thing I love about you starting with real estate is that, and I never thought of what you said, but you started running the full page ads upside down, and which is really brilliant because people are going through and they're like, oh wait, what's wrong? And then they have to turn the page over, but they have to see it. Like it forces people to want to see it.
So that was brilliant. interruption advertising.
Yeah, it's a pattern interrupt.
That's
Because
right.
you can't flip through and just go, oh, that page is upside down. Your mind is going to force you to turn it over and look at it. So that actually super brilliant. And when your cash flow got like down and you were cut off from cash flow, you realized that you needed to make some life-changing things, and you got up and you got learning about real estate, and then that led you into doing syndications. You bought your first rental in 2010, and through the process of the divorce and all the things, no cash flow, and you were down to like 18 bucks getting gas for $1, which I have totally been there too. And you like Tupac, you like pizza, you like the magic of the mornings. You have two kinds of syndications. The first one is a one-off. The second one is a fund of funds. And people have A, 500,000 minimum, 10%, 80-20, and B, 50,000, 50, 57%.
The fund is open all the time.
Okay, the fund is always open.
Syndications are basically sent out as opportunities at the time, and once they're subscribed or oversubscribed or whatever, we have to shut those down and then move on to the next. Then we start.
So did I get a little bit of what's in the mind of Casey Brown?
It's on the mind every day.
And you like bourbon.
I like bourbon a lot, but I drink when I do. I like a good bourbon for sure. So
when I started drinking a couple years ago, and I'm not a big whiskey fan. It was honey whiskey, and it's like, wow, it's so good.
Yeah,
it's like the first time I ever had it. I'm like,
Yeah, I've never had it. I've seen it at the store. So
it's
all of that.
I'm like just a wine person at this point. Unless I'm at my dad's, I'm still a moonshine girl. So I just want to, first of all, I want to thank you for being on the show. And I want to just remind everybody that, Casey and I do these podcasts, and we do them to help educate you and teach you the things that we've learned and the things that we're doing, because we do care about your success. Podcasts are a lot of fun, but they are a labor of love. And it takes a lot of time and effort for folks like us to be able to bring you all of the information that we've learned over the years. And a lot of it we've learned by the seat of our pants. So we really are here to help you cut your learning curve. So I want you to find Casey's podcast, CashFlow Pro podcast. And obviously you're listening to the most wonderful real estate podcast ever. And I want you to subscribe, leave a 5-star review. And for my podcast, if you leave a 5-star review and you write something really awesome about me, when I'm teaching by myself, I might read your review. And so just do us a favor and help support our podcast. Share it around as many people as you know, because I know we both want to have like top rated podcasts, and we can't be in the top or stay at the top without all of you. So you all matter to us. And if you go to my site, Dwanderful.com, and opt in, I have 4 free ebooks for you that'll help you get started on the path to real estate investing. So Casey, first of all, thank you. And I love your heart. I love your spirit. I'm super happy I got to meet you today. And I just love, like in my mind, I know exactly where you're at. And I know where you're going and shopping. And it's just like, it kind of puts me back over there, which is kind of a neat thing for me.
Yeah, I guess that's what. Oh, I don't have any hair either. Can you tell the listeners?
That's okay. My hair is pink. So the last thing is I like to guess to leave us with a parting word of wisdom, but it's actually just one single word. So leave us with a word.
Focus.
Focus. Focus is a good word. Okay, so folks, your homework this week is to focus on the word focus. And also to go to CashFlow Pro podcast. And one more time, CashFlow.pro. I really like that. I did not know .pros were available instead of .com. So I'm going to have to go snap me up a couple websites today. So I really love that. And I just want to thank you. And I just want you to know I appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking your time.
Thanks for having me.
Time is our most valuable asset. So when someone spends time with me, I truly do appreciate the time.
Sure. Well, I'm glad. And I don't know if I made mention, but the CashFlow Pro is a daily podcast. So
and it's daily. I know. How do you do it every day? Good for you.
Get all of the you can binge listen, and in 2 or 3 days you can be up and running in your real estate investing business. So.
Nice. I love it. All right, guys. So we will be back. Same bat time, same bat channel. And remember that the truth is in the red letters. All right, everybody. Ciao. And Casey, thank you. And everyone stay tuned for the next show.